Welcome. Thank you so much for pressing on play. I'm not sure how you watching on the other side came to be looking and viewing this video. So to set the context for those of you that might be just watching this portion of the video in isolation, I will try to give a background of why I'm making this video here and why I've labeled this video New Mum. For those of you who've been following along in the chronological order, I ask for your patience as yet again I set the scene of the framework of my mum's life and where this particular recording fits within it. So once again I shall present my mother here, Mum, Mrs. Elizabeth Betty Omotoso, 1930 to 2022, the 18th of May. 92 good years. And as I embarked upon this project to document my mother's life, many of you may know by now, I started out to try to publish the booklet that she'd written about her life in Nigeria, 28 years, extraordinary years as a trailblazer going out, and I am the product of that adventure that she undertook with my father. But then I realized there was more to my mother's life in Wales and her rich heritage, and I became interested in Wales, especially as even I myself was born in Wales and feel the pull of those valleys somehow within me. And of course, the story of meeting my father. Who could resist such a narrative, a wonderful fairy tale come true? And then with the untimely passing of my father in 2004, he was only 74 years old, I realized my mother had a last phase to her life where she traveled extensively, mainly to see me and also my brother in Australia, all over the world. And I embarked upon documenting that, which is now complete. But I realized that there was a small, discrete stage in my mother's life at the end, the last 2 years, where she was transformed because her body was no longer able to perform in its usual manner. And she underwent a transformation in my eyes, and one which ultimately at its best I have called New Mum. And that's what I would like to embark upon today. And I would expect this to be my most difficult recording because it was the end of her life. And for those of you that looked at the recording of the Nigerian period in her life, where I managed to look at all her handwritten notes and produce her Life in Nigeria booklet, which if you're clicking on this live streaming website where you are now clicking on this video, this booklet's available in PDF to be read. And also there's some hours of me going through it, reading it and embellishing it with facts, maps and pictures. And by the way, I'm glad we've caught a little bit of daylight. I had intended to start a little bit earlier, but at least we have a little bit of light. But I bring this book up because in the preface that I wrote here, I've touched upon a little bit of what I'm trying to say here. This is the foreword to my mother's book, Her Life in Nigeria. So my foreword was, as I sit here in Doha, Qatar, a few months after the passing of my beloved mother, I am still struck by my overwhelming urge to meet her again. Not only for the memory left of the profound unconditional love she always showed me and of her constant care, and here's the bit that I'm aiming at, but that I feel I glimpsed the light of her spirit itself at the end, and witnessed a beauty that has left an indelible burn. And it is this beauty that I would like to describe, or try to describe in this recording, which I know is unusual, but I'm guided to continue to do this because it emanates from within me. And what I would like to do before I go any further is to invoke the spirit of my father. I carry this with me lately. You can see it's in a plastic pochette. But in case it's shining, I will remove it. 1996, Melbourne. My father came to visit, standing at the end of the pier. I would like to invoke your power, dear Dad, and your frame for this recording, that you will hold it steady just as you held our lives steady and cradled us in your arms. That was easy to take for granted, the structure you provided, but everything occurred on the stage you laid down for us. And I'm eternally grateful. So Dad, may you look over this recording and give me guidance. And even though it's about your beloved wife, you're never far from my thoughts. And as I carry this, on the other side is the grave that you're laid to rest, where Mum now lies with you, which will be the subject of the very end of this video. Thank you for the blessing. I also ask for your guidance, Mum, and may you be guiding me together in this recording. I've been working with the people in London who did the funeral for Mum, and they're called funeral streaming. They have been fantastic. Working with them, posting these videos, and this one you might have encountered it as a link on the streaming website if this is where you've found this video, amongst all the other videos of the sequence of her life, which all exist on the streaming website. And the gentleman said to me, well, there are many ways of mourning. We all mourn in different ways, implying that this was my mourning process. And I kind of went, ooh, I hadn't really thought of it that way, not denying that that's not the case. It probably is some form of therapeutic outlet on my behalf. But I do think that the greater urge is to showcase my mum. I think when I look inside and see where the drive is coming from, it's to document her life, it's to show it, to showcase it, that they may not go quietly into the grave, my mum and dad, because they shone a light, subtle though it was of a sublime frequency. And I want it shown. And if I get some kind of mourning process along the side, well, that's the cream on the cake for me. So thank you. Context is very important, and we haven't even begun. The booklet of my mum's order of service is also on this website. If you click, you can see the PDF, where some of the images I will share are already in this order of service, which starts with our fabulous upbringing in Nigeria, or the wedding of my mum and dad, being brought up in Nigeria with such splendid parents. Always remember Mum saying, when you look back, it'll be the best years of your life. You'll see. They've all been good, with the challenges that they've brought. And then the last pictures of my mum, some of which you'll see. So I do mention that as well, so that this compendium and celebration of her life is also mentioned for those of you that might be new to this work that I am delivering here. Another thing that got me to do this is that when I gave my extended eulogy, the first recording that you see on this website, this streaming website, where I realized that my 7-minute eulogy in the church, of course, could not fit in the magnificence of my mother. And that's when I thought I would like to say some more. And I realized that it was something that could technically be done, but the video had 2 cuts in it, and they were lost. The cameras, some technical issue, and one of them was in describing this latter stage of my mum's life. Admittedly, I only spoke for maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes or so about this subject. This video, of course, is going to be far longer, because I become more in-depth and detailed in my approach. But that pained me. I thought, just as I was describing new mum It was lost. Some of it was in the recording, but others were also lost. And there was also another gap, a second gap occurred in the video. If you watch the video, you'll see a flash and then a discontinuity. That's 2 flashes. Those were the breaks that were lost. The second gap is simply where I was describing how I was going to quit my work and return to look after Mum, and I'll touch upon that. But that was also not to be. So those gaps inspired this video here, and maybe there's always a silver lining, because had those gaps not come, I probably thought it would be satisfactory, but instead I'm doing a much deeper dive into this last part of Mum's life, new Mum. So this, where we last left off in the recording, the last part of Mum's life was World Traveller, and we just left at 2020, where right up until 2020, the last 18 months had not really been World Traveller. She was now becoming increasingly housebound within the apartment, and we left off there at around about, I was just leaving her for the last time that I'd see her fit. In the last recording at the very end, you'll see it was January 2020, and I left. But on this, back to Qatar, but on this website that you found this video, if you look, you'll see another standalone short video called Mum's 90th Birthday, which someone kindly filmed on the day, 8th of May, from the garden downstairs up to Mum, where all the community stood and sang happy birthday to her. On Victory Day, 75 years after the end of the Second World War, what a great date. And it was such a fitting tribute by the people in the block of flats and the people in the houses opposite. And Mum stood there and waved. We did a Zoom call, Simon from Australia, myself from Qatar, Richard was there with her, and she was tired. She had so many cards, so much attention, and you can see how weak she was. She took about 3-ish days to recover from that intrusion of so much output in one day. Her energy levels had always been problematic. My mum said, my problem is I look much better than I am, and we laugh. And Maggie, the lady looking after her, said, yeah, you're right, Bet. So she suffered from energy levels which were limited. She'd fade, she'd need to rest, and then she'd be all right again, especially if there was any heat. So that really took it out of her. So she told me, Peter, I can just about look after myself, you know, just about do everything. She was doing everything for herself, not going out to shop, of course, the food was brought to the house, but everything else she was self-sufficient. So anyway, so to start my story finally on New Mum, how did it all begin? 8th of May, fabulous celebration of the birthday and honor, seeing her 3 sons, 2 on the screen and 1 with her. 30th of May, she fell in the living room on her knee, agonizing fall. She broke her knee. She had to go to King's College Hospital on that date, and they looked and did x-rays and thought, nah, its bones are broken in there. There's no other way, but she has to have a knee replacement. Turned out it ended up being a 3/4 knee replacement. A 3/4 knee replacement. Now, she was admitted to King's College, Trundle Ward, I remember, and that's when I started monitoring her situation. If you were able to see to my right at the back, I have a filing cabinet, and my files on Mum are about this thick. Miscellaneous topics over the year, all sorts of things, health, supplements, relatives, phone numbers, visits, flights, computer. I even was looking at the other day in my notes teaching Mum how to use the computer all there, and then she embellished and summarized them in her own handwriting and really got stuck into sending emails. So the reason I know it was Trundle Ward is because I've got a ton of notes where I would ring, and every time I'd ring, I'd have my pen and piece of paper ready as I talked to the nurses, talked to the doctors, or talked to whoever was running the place, and would like monitor the situation very carefully on what was going on, what condition, what did she need, what did they think, why was she behaving in a way that I didn't recognize. you can get the general idea. So I have reams and pages of these notes. This is where it all started, and people were very supportive as best they could. It was all new to our family on how this would work. There's more here. So anyway, she was in Trundle Ward. COVID had descended on us in March, and that's why when they sang to my mother from this lawn, everyone stood social distanced. It all seems quite ridiculous now, but it was, in some cases, serious in effect, and it even in the end did affect my mum, as you'll learn. So this Trundle Ward episode was worrying to us, for someone so old to have to go through that operation, full anesthetic and everything. So she did. She came through it, and she was in the hospital for, it seems quite short, for 3 weeks. True, just 3 weeks, to the 21st of June. And it was in that hospital visit that I noticed that Mum might say unusual things, like, "I've been discharged," she'd say. And I thought, whoa, and I choked the nurse and said, "No, your mother's not been discharged." And then, because of the anesthetic and other things, she'd say, "I've seen so-and-so." She'd mention a person that couldn't possibly have been there. So the very nice head nurse, an Irish lady, said, you don't know?" I said, "Sorry, what do you mean?" She said, "It's delirium. Your mother has delirium." And I said, "I never heard of delirium." She said, "Oh, it's the elderly. It's well over half the people here will have delirium. It's the mind plays tricks. It's sort of like dementia, but temporary. It leaves. Spatial things can mix up. Time and temporal things can mix up. Slight hallucinations can occur. The mind's not itself." One of my best friend's mothers didn't display any unusual signs, but when she got home, she completely denied she'd ever been to hospital. She said, "No, I've been here." So she just blanked it out entirely. Really, really unusual condition. Still not understood, as is dementia, still not fully understood. So that was concerning, and Mum was not quite normal. Sometimes you couldn't tell when she was inventing something in a delusion or whether it was real. But physically she seemed strong enough. Richard was able to visit once or twice. No one else could visit. COVID again, isolated, but at least there was some visits. So after 3 weeks she went to the Pulross Rehabilitation Centre in Brixton, near Brixton. We decided, look, she's got to learn how to walk, and she might as well go for this rehab because without the mobility, it's going to be not good. Mind-body connection is so strong. Without exercise, everything starts to go downhill, including the mind. And the mind was what was being, the mind was the weak point that we needed to protect. So she went to the Pulross Rehab Centre, and this time there were no visitors allowed. And Mums did not like it. She didn't take to the exercises very well. She felt that the nursing was harsh, that they would, whenever she called, they just kind of ignore her. She had some people who had full-on dementia nearby that would make loud noises during the night. She couldn't sleep. They'd come to do the exercises and she'd just be washed out. She wouldn't be able to do them. But we persevered, and she was in there for 5 weeks. I don't know whether she went forward or backward, but she could sort of stand on a standing frame and shuffle across the ward and back again. Grateful for that. And I would call. We got her a new phone. I would ring her, but she wasn't happy. She really was not liking the care or the food. And the head nurse was a male Filipino, was a good chap, and he tried to do his best. And sometimes I wasn't quite sure if Mum's complaints were completely real or embellished by her condition. It was hard to tell, and nobody could go and see her. That was a long time, didn't do her any good. I couldn't travel. I was trapped in Qatar with COVID. So 24th of July, 21st of June, she went into Pulross after let's do this right. 30th of May, she went into Trundle Ward, King's College. 3 weeks later, on the 21st of June, day before my birthday, she went into Pulross Rehab Centre. 5 weeks later, on the 24th of July, she was discharged and came home. She arrived home to the situation where there were carers that were looking after her, and they said her bed is not suitable, not allowed to bend backs, etc. I do think the UK has gone a little bit overboard with the health and safety. It's hard to get the balance in things in life, isn't it? Still got a bit of dusk there. So she, 5 weeks went by of Mum still not really being settled in her mind. The delirium still seemed to be around, and it was too hot in her living normal bedroom, so we moved her into the back cooler room, and we got a hospital bed. And she would sometimes not eat, or just generally not take to the carers. She couldn't walk. She wasn't able to independently go to the loo. She began to wear a nappy. Things were sort of deteriorating. I managed to organize the council to come and give a full assessment for physio. And they said, look, she didn't do too bad. We'll come again and we'll give her, it took a lot of organizing. You can see my copious calls. I'd ring and ring and ring and ring every day to the UK almost, and try and work with the people there to, especially the physios, to try and get the state to help us. Because they were already helping us with the carers, which was good, but the physio was the weak point. So it was looking promising, where the lady that I was dealing with says, yep, we can do a package, and I think we can do something there. She seemed to be able to stand on this Sarah Steady and do a few steps. And but I think the very next day, the carers came and they found my mum on the floor. Conscious, I think, but just in pain and out of it mentally. She'd fallen out of the bed. She was unsettled and had just fallen. Richard came home, my brother, and was aghast. We talked on the phone, and of course, hospital had to be called for sure, eh? And the hospital was called. So that very evening, she was back in King's. And the diagnosis was that she'd fractured 4 ribs on one of the sides. And I don't know what it is about the elderly and breaking bones, but it does not sit well with elderly people to break bones. It's like they're never the same. I mean, if I fractured 4 ribs, I'm sure it would hurt and I'd be out of sorts and I'd probably be off work. I don't know how long I'd have to lie in bed. It wouldn't be pleasant. But with my mum, let's just say that it almost killed her. Literally. She almost died from that fall. She was completely out of it in King's Hospital. So this time she was taken to the Marjorie Warren ward, a special ward for dementia, named after a special nurse from many years ago who pioneered care in a certain manner that is still used till this day. God bless Marjorie Warren, because the ward was quite good, and they tried their best. COVID was still around. Finally, I was able to travel with the rules. There was a flight that I was able to take, and I got a certificate saying I was COVID-free, which I was. They came to the house to do it. Technically, that wasn't really sufficient for me to head into a hospital, but they were so cool and they knew what I was doing and how I'd come, and I showed, and they just let me visit. As long as I just kept to myself, kept to Mum's bed. And when I walked into the ward that first time and saw Mum, I thought she was dead. She had her mouth open. She was absolutely gaunt and pale. Couldn't have her hair cut because COVID. She looked like a mad woman because of all her hair. And I broke down crying, as anyone would, because I was like, my God, what's happened to you, Mum? Plus, she didn't know where she was. She thought she was, she always thought she was in some kind of hotel or something. And she was there for 5.5 weeks without ever realizing she was in a hospital. And I used to ask her, who do you think these people are, Mum? The nurses coming and going. She wouldn't answer. She'd just look at me. So I'd go every day, and visitors, they'd let me stay longer. I'd spend 3 hours by her side, 3 hours. There was a Marks and Spencer downstairs, and I'd hand feed her and go down and come back up and bring her prawns. We discovered there were certain things she would eat. And she was finally discharged as high risk, it said on the discharge, high risk discharge. And they considered my brother and I went, 2 boys, how are they going to manage, eh? Thinking she probably needs some daughters, as I'd always said. You should have had some daughters, Mum. I become your daughter. Nick, thank God I was able to do both. Dual. As best I could. So on the 6th of October 2020, she was back in the flat. I was still there. Holiday running out. I had 1 week, or was it 10 days, I think it was. I extended my leave. Work was very understanding. They've always been understanding. They've been very, very good on all these points. I praise them mightily. I had 10 weeks to equip the house for someone that was incredibly frail, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything. Bought a whole load of special cutlery, special plates, special drinking implements. Got a table that would lift and rise. Insisted they give her a better chair. The government people said, she'll just live in this room. She'll just move from the bed to the chair. But I said, no way. She's not going to live in one room. Had them change her chair to one with wheels so she could be lifted out of the bed into the chair and pushed to the bedroom, to the living room. Then pushed back in the chair to for the siesta. Lifted out of the chair with this crane into the bed, and then have a siesta, and in the evening lifted into the chair, pushed back into the living room as well for dinner, and then pushed back into the chair to the bedroom, lifted back into the bed for like 8 p.m. she'd be there, and she'd be out of that bed 8 p.m. the next 12 hours in that bed the next day, through the night. So rather than subject you to that routine again, that was Mum's routine till she passed. And if you think of it, it's very logical. What else routine would you do? That's the routine. Sleep, go to the living room for the morning, come back to the bedroom for the afternoon to rest, go back to the living room for your dinner and tea and a little bit of socializing if possible, and then go back to the bedroom and then sleep all night till the next morning. Makes sense? And that's what she did with the aid of a lift and a chair with wheels, which you'll see. So I had gone through so much worry. It's almost see Mum just pull back from the brink there. And as I headed off to Heathrow, that she was sort of many times into herself. And there's a word for the delirium. There's an up part of the delirium and there's a down part. I wish I'd looked it up. I forget the technical names, but the down parts the person will be very in, and then the up part they may be agitated in some way. So Mum was mainly in, and she sort of looked up. I was about to leave, and she said, "I'll be better when I see you at Christmas." She said, "Oh gosh, how my heart lifted." It was the most triumphant trip back to the airport and hopping on the plane. It was such a moment. I was so happy. And that 17th of October. But I've skipped on a little bit. I have skipped a little bit of what I wanted to say. before we go any further, of Mum's, the new Mum, just to say, so what we now conclude is that the lady whose world was her oyster and who went to Nigeria down here, all the way to Australia, Southeast Asia that you can see, Qatar, Europe when she was a little girl, even Europe later on with her family. All this, she'd returned home to end her years in England. And in honor, in the UK, in honor of the great UK, from whence she comes, I will show the UK in all its glory once again. And Wales, she's from up here. But now we're here, where my father ended his life and where our story of my mother's life now, with the last 2 years, features. This is a bit of context that I'd left out, which I'll still fit in honor of the UK and in honor of London. Here we are, everything now in London. As the radius of my mother's life has shrunk, we now find ourselves here. In the last recording, we covered all these trips that we made. No more trips now. It's all about London. Mum's adopted home, of many homes that she had. I'm glad to mention that, to put things ever more in context. And even more, if any of you watched the last video when I said there was an Art Deco house that Mum and I visited, and I didn't know the name, I've just found it, Eltham Palace. If you ever want to visit, it's worth a visit. That was one of the trips I described and showed a picture of Eltham Palace. Eltham Palace is out here. There you go. And we are here, Crystal Palace. So now we're talking about Mum in her home in Crystal Palace that she wisely bought in 1977. So thank you for letting me do a little bit of context setting, and you can see where we are. South London, the Thames, West End up here. Yep, City of London. And doesn't quite show the whole of the north of London. But for those of you who haven't watched the other videos, this is where this story is unfolding, within London in the south, Crystal Palace, Southeast 19. And we'll visit that map again. So back as I recount the story now of the Mum's challenges with her health, I skipped a little bit ahead because when Mum was in the hospital the second time around in the Marjorie Warren ward, as you know, I was able to turn up and see her there, and I was aghast by her condition. But someone, Maggie, arranged, the lady who helps look after Mum, for her friend to come and give Mum a haircut. It really was not looking good. So she had a haircut in the ward. And at one stage, she kind of perked up, and this photo was the first time I saw some hope. If you'd have seen her 3-4 weeks prior when she was admitted, these are pictures that I could never show to anyone. How she looked, it would be unfair, but look at this picture of my mum. Mum the fighter. She's still not sure where she is and not completely back with us. She's thinking about something. When I saw that photo and I thought, my gosh, she is looking better. And I sent it all around. And she even looks a little bit wistful. So this was the first signs of life that, wow, Mum is coming back to us. And because I thought that I was going to lose my mum, she really was so bad. As I held her hand, isn't there something about hands? with all the things that they do to implement our lives for so long. They implement our lives, I guess, don't they? I, of course, took a photo of her hand, and I was very emotional about that. And it was my boss, he mentioned, he's an Arabic gentleman, and he mentioned hands. And my God, he set me off that day when he said something, I can't remember, it was quite poetic. He even will remember that event, because I said, gosh, when you talked about, so I took a photo of her hands, and I want to show her hands here, because look at all the work they've done, these hands. And there's another reason I show them, because of her rings, which I'll mention. Mum's hands, as she lay in the hospital in Marjorie Warren Ward. 91-year-old hand. Well, 90. She just turned 90. All the loving, kind acts this hand has performed. But if you look at the ring, this is what touched me even more. My father gave her that engagement ring in 1955, 45, 65 years, 65 years ago. 65 years ago, he gave her that engagement ring, and then he gave her the wedding ring. And she loved him. He was her only love. She loved only my father. I tried to get her some company once, because and no, she was never interested. Never. And I must say, I hold these rings in my safe here with me. What an honor for me to have these rings here, just in the next room. These very 2 rings my father gave to my mother, and she wore for her whole life. We lost them. She became so thin they fell off in the flat, and luckily we found them again on the carpet. So my mother's hands. And I've mentioned she was dismissed, or I always forget the word now. She came back home, and she was a high-risk discharged patient. So we rummaged around and did as much as we could to set things up with got a new set of carers, which were better than the other ones. Got everything set up. Mum perked up right at the end, and I think it was the very day I left. You see, she's always trying, before she'd made that comment, I'll be better. I had this photo, but I didn't realize that it was from this visit. I did not realize Mum looked this way after all she'd been through, after the first, straight out from the hospital from breaking the ribs. 17th of October 2020, just to go back. Look at Mum. Who would have thought? See her eyes, bright. She's coming back to us. If I showed you pictures of her in the hospital, you wouldn't believe it was the same person. And here, equally lovely, but in glasses, which we changed. We got her better glasses than this, eventually. And this picture's in her order of service, to show how bright she was, even then, straight from the hospital. So I returned, and I never realized I was going to be trapped away with this COVID thing from October. The upshot is, from the 17th of October, I was unable to return to Mum till I think it was the 25th of June when I next saw her. 8 months, just phone calls. As I noticed, especially towards the end of that period, her mind started to give in to that routine and her predicament of no exercise, because she was getting no exercise. And it broke my heart once when she said, I do my exercises, I lift my arms and legs. So even she knew that she needed to do exercises of her own volition, but we were not providing them for her because the government had given up on her for physio. Mind you, they were providing the carers, which was an immense help, but they just, even if the physio had continued, I tried, and they said, look, your mum didn't respond, lost case. She ain't ever going to walk. And I couldn't organize it from being far away, even if anyone could afford it. I'll be honest with you, dear audience, £75 an hour for physio is quite a lot, but that's the price for someone to come to your home and give you physio. So even if you can afford it, you've got to be there to organize it. And it was one of the worst times of my life because I knew that Mum was wasting away without a program to get her moving, to get her back to at least try to keep some muscles, try to feed her brain with more oxygen. And if you look at delirium and dementia, that's one of the things that they stress, exercise. So it was very tragic. Everyone has their stories of how COVID conspired to cause such pain, either through losing your business, losing your livelihood, seeing your grandparents trapped in a home, watching them have to be buried and die alone, and they not even understanding why their loved ones haven't come to visit them. Terrible stories of what's occurred with this COVID lockdown. So much suffering, plus the fact that people were genuinely dying. So this was our possibly mild by comparison to others who suffered, our effect of how it affected us, although it did affect us again later, as you'll hear. So I caught the first flight out of Qatar. I kept trying to come, and they'd always change it. I finally was allowed to come. I spent 11 days in Stanford Airport in a hotel locked in my room for the isolation before you could come out into the public. Looking back, it all sounds so bizarre, doesn't it? I spent my birthday in this room. Paradoxically, it was the first time I could chill because I couldn't do anything. Spoke to Mum and her mind condition. One of the carers said, now I arrived in June, and one of the carers said it was around about May. It's around about May she slipped lower in her mind, to getting a grip on time, names, memory, what things meant, understanding. I said, Mum, will you watch TV? She says, I can't focus on it. I can't, and I barely see with my macula. Will you listen to your audiobooks? No, I can't really follow along with the story. Sequence time. She didn't say it that way, but that, I presume, was why it held little attraction to her. So, so suddenly, we haven't really gotten on to New Mum, but you can start to see a glimpse of New Mum, can't you? Someone showed you this picture. You can start to see a certain something there. Because those of you that have watched the other videos know very well what Mum looks like. So now finally I was back. I had about 5 weeks of quality time with Mum. I've written in my notes, gradually we started to have a new Mum. And I put, and even this Mum I loved. Well, of course. But I didn't know that it was possible to love this Mum even more. And I haven't read any books about the subject of the onset of dementia. But surely someone must have written about the effect of which I'm describing. And what I want to say is I will not romanticize things. The most pressing reality is that it's a very mundane existence, and a tragic existence when someone's mind changes in this way, because one, it's hard to care for them. Two, the person is suffering. Three, the person's life is being lost to them. Four, depending on the person's genetic predisposition, background, etc., they may become very cantankerous, often even violent, because opposite Mum, when she was in the Marjorie Warren ward, there was a lady whose dementia was quite advanced, and my God, she came out with some very rough talk and utterances and loud. How distressing. But Mum, perhaps due to her gentle nature and her loving nature, at best became grumpy and negative and fed up, because she's human. She wouldn't be grumpy and negative and fed up. As she'd lost her sight, she'd now lost her mobility. She couldn't grab her mind, and all during her life, one of her major feats that I praised my mum was that she mastered time. My God, Mum had a routine. She wouldn't be knocked off that routine at all. And she'd look at me and like, ugh, you, Peter. I was good at other things, but that wasn't my strength. Spatially, of course, she was not good. Spatially, she was, this was not her strength, but time and routine and discipline, what an example. And you've heard me eulogize her at length for that. So, so now I'm back, starting to see a new Mum emerged amidst the hardship. It's just like a gift from the heavens. When so much has been taken away, something was given to her and to us. But if you asked, would you just prefer normality? Of course. So I don't romanticize it, that it was some walk in the park. But there was something which I'll try to describe. And I said it left an indelible burn, didn't I? It did. Up until now. So here I am, back with Mum. COVID's still snapping around, but at least I'm with her. It's late June, and I've got 5 weeks. Interview 2 sets of physios. They're very good. Employ the most convenient one. And this made a huge difference. They'd come 5 times a week, and one of the times they'd take Mum out to in a wheelchair on the Sundays. It was a 2-person team. They did a good job, and I suddenly started to feel much happier. Mum also had no company, and for a socialized person, she said, it's doing my head in, Peter. And in fact, it did end up doing her head in. It sort of muddled her. And if you read about dementia, you need to speak with people, you need visitors coming, you need levity, you need discussion, you need movement, you need exercise, and she wasn't getting any of that. Precious little. So it accelerated her process. COVID and other things. So now I also employed someone to come in and sit and be with Mum in the afternoons. And I will mention her by name. Her name is Jean. And she'd come. And her only role, she was the only person why she stands out from all the others, where after a while we realized that all the tasks that I'd set for Jean, of the kitchen, some cleaning, the this and that, were not what this was all about. And Mum would call her, where are you? Her role was to sit and not stray from Mum's side, so that Mum had someone finally there with her. Everyone else was on a mission because of busyness and the fact that they were workers to see Mum, do what they needed to do, and then move on. No guests would come and sit. Kate would occasionally come. I take that back. And the volunteer lady was unable to come with COVID, but would call her on Tuesdays and she'd talk. And Mum would have some phone calls. So this was like a jewel of this person that would just simply be with Mum. This was a different energy, a different role. So these things started to become in place. And I was heartened that we could push back in this way. And so then I will show you some images of the emergence of new Mum. First of all, to share that our beloved, the setting again. We've talked, I've showed you the maps of it's all in London, it's all in Crystal Palace. And I will show you the setting of Marlow Court. In the last video recording, I did show you some recordings of the building from the back. I won't fish them out now. A beautiful block, Marlow Court. But you can see from the front how lovely it is as well. How lovely is that? Here we are. So Mum would sit and look out of this huge bay window into this beautifully quiet setting with the occasional person strolling by. And she'd say, "Can you push my chair to the window?" So she'd get a better view of this window. The sun would set and you'd get lots of light coming in. Double-edged sword because it would make it hot in the summer. And this was Mum's bedroom here. Make sure I get that right. Yes, also quiet. So this apartment's been in the family for a very long time when Mum bought this apartment. And it's still in the family, I'm pleased to say. So this was the setting. This was Mum's last resting place, in a way. I'll rephrase that. This was Mum's last place that she lived. And within that room, you can start to see from my visit from late June, where I spent 5 weeks, we start to have new Mum emerging, sitting at her table, specially prepared table, at the window, with various special implements. Special cup with a straw, special drinking, special plate, supplements. And there's Mum, her face starting to change, slowly. And I'd look at Mum and think, wow, that haircut really suits you, Mum. Looking pretty chic. And that was the 7th of July, when I'd just arrived. I was so happy. By the 25th of July, I was still there. And I took her out for a wheelchair push on the 25th of July. Glad I got the dates of all these. Just up the road, Farquhar Road. And there she is, always ready to shine that spirit. Bumped into a lovely lady and said, "Would you take some photos of us?" So we took that on our little walk. Mum would always call it a walk, and of course it was really a push. So there we are, and it was on the way back down from that road that I was struck by Mum's beauty, just to put it bluntly. The light shone in a certain way. I looked at her face, I looked at the structure, and I thought, I've not seen this before. She's changing. And I think it must be because of her weight loss, that all the weight she carried in her face for her whole life, making it a little bit full, was now going away. She looked quite fit with it. And it wasn't just me. I'll fast forward. A lady that did her nails rang, "Is the pretty lady there?" I said, "Is my mum pretty?" She said, "Oh, your mum is beautiful." And other people would note. And because Mum couldn't see, she hadn't looked in a mirror in years. She had no idea what she looked like. She just looked at me like, as if, well. Anyway, this was the photo that I took, and it formed the brochure for the order of service. And I snapped off about 5 photos. I know that I didn't capture exactly what I saw, but I almost got it. This was the best of the set. And you can see we had it we had this up at her funeral in a big frame, in a beautiful frame. We had it up. So this was on that trip, 25th of July, 2021. Mid-COVID, Peter visiting. New mum appearing. And even as we returned to the apartment on that drive, we ran into our neighbours below. I don't have, will not show the pictures of them here, but I can show Mum. I like it because in the background is our beloved flat. There we are again. And there's Mum with a winning smile and her pink pashmina. In the end, she had many pashminas, a color for every day. And one day she said, I can't really tell the difference much between these colors, but at least we got the pleasure of looking at them. So there she is, another lovely picture of Mum emerging. And that same day, 2 days later, I said, look, let me splash out and get one of these fancy, was it Sainsbury's, or could it have been, was I buying Ocado by that time, or was it Waitrose? I think I went to Waitrose later. Anyway, after multiple warmings and stuff, we had a massive curry. So there she is wearing the protective apron around her, and tons of food, which of course I mainly ate. But just to show how very good she was looking in a way. And then I think that's a nice one to end that on. Oh no, there's one more. Around about that time, the physio lady sent me a photo. Yeah, Mum, she said. And she was sitting in her chair. And this we also used in the funeral. And we put it up in a big frame. And we had it in the church and in the reception. Look at that lovely one of Mum's earnest look. Of course, it's a bit rolled up there, but you can see, I'm sure, that lovely look. Mum's spirit shining through. Not looking old, but not looking the same as she looked previously. But more changes are to come. And we use this on the back of the order of service. It's such a fine representation of her. So holidays expired and I went back to Qatar. I was next able to come in December 2022, the same year. To December 2021, of course. Typo here. Mum was somewhat fed up of the routine. Taste buds were not good. Food, difficult to do. She was immobile. For someone like her, so active, to just be immobile. You can move your arms. Physio was not working so well to allow her to walk. Her legs were weak, but it was definitely a boon. And she liked going out with the second partner of the physio on Wednesdays in the wheelchair. And all that movement and stretching and trying, and was definitely, without it, her decline would have been very much faster. But nevertheless, she was disappointed. I would call her, and every second day, usually, And I would have a pen with me, as I always do when I have a conversation for something important, or it's just being an engineer, I guess, and even with Mum, just in case she said something profound. I wouldn't want to go, what did she say? I'd want to know what she said. So that was my habit. I guess other people have different habits of keeping a diary or something, and I just had a habit of making note of Mum's memorable utterances. So going back to, I'll just go back a bit to when she was discharged from hospital the last time after breaking her ribs at the end of 2020. I went back after that, and then in November 2020, I know I'm going back in the story now, she said, one day I'll stand, she said in the November. That Christmas Day, she said, you have been a very good son. But she would periodically tell me that, but she wouldn't lay it on too thick. She said, some days are better than others. I'm not hallucinating, she said. And on that Christmas Day, when are you coming? She said. Yes, and then February 2021, with the big gap when I've locked out because of COVID, she said, I do exercises, heads, arms and legs. I'm doing the best I can. Stay well, my love. And I thought, oh, that's what's, can't we do that, do better? And in March 2021, she said, Diolch yn fawr iawn, I'm sure I'm butchering it, Welsh for thank you very much. Nos da, good morning. Nos da, good night, she said. Bore da, good morning. She was reminding me of a little bit of Welsh. She'd say to me, stay safe. Now remember, I'm going back. We're still in the period when I was locked out before I came and took these photos that I've just shown you. See all my notes? One day I might type these out. And then she's looking back. The fish and chips in Brunei, Peter. We had some lovely times, didn't we, Peter? And then again in April 2021, I think about you, Peter. We had something special, didn't we? We went on many holidays together. These notes. And then I went back. So now I'm up to date, because I was going to read some of these. The other ones, of course, but I won't read them out. Yeah, still locked out in COVID in April. before I came for that flight when I was in the quarantine. I take it all in my stride. I did about walking. I take it all in my stride. I did my best. I took it all very philosophically. They tried to help me to stand, but I couldn't. I suddenly realized I couldn't. There was no point trying to move. What can I do? I can't cry. There are no exercises. I still have hope. Don't worry. What can I do? I tried my best. I feel sad for myself and for you. I do my best. Think of the lovely times we've had. We've had so many lovely times. And then another week would go by and she'd say, I'm cheerful enough. I think of you with great aplomb. Haven't used that word for a while. I'm longing to see you. Stay well. Look after yourself. I'll be okay. I'm a survivor. And she laughed. I'm fine, but don't worry about me. My love is always constant. Stay safe. I do all the exercises. These are the ones that she was inventing by herself. Don't strain yourself. Look after yourself. So now we're up to date. And I think I'm just about leaving because I've showed you the photographs and I've just showed you this photograph when I said that then I left in July 2021, did I? So in August 2021, she writes, I'm bearing up, I'm doing myself proud for you and the others just to stay alive. And I knew that. Then something came up, not a torture for me, she said, I did it. I was very pleased. You remember to rest. Yes. Beautiful day today, 20 degrees. That was just before I came, before the COVID lockdown. Then so I will read a few more because remember I've just gone back in July 2021 and now I won't appear again till Christmas 2021, my last Christmas with Mum. So from that summer into the winter, just a few more comments. Now the physio's installed, as I've just mentioned, for that 6 months from summer 2021 to Christmas 2021, I had to leave for work and this gap. So in the middle of that gap in September, Jean's installed, the physio's installed, as I said. She goes, oh yes, I'm very sharp. And then in September again, she says, I do want to walk again. I try my best. I wish I could walk around a bit, she said. And then again in September 2021, of course, I'm in Qatar. This is a conversation. Stay well. And then I spoke to her twice, and thanks to Jean, I could take Mum a video of me walking home with my iPad on my face and turning it around. See, Mum, this is the walk home. This is the big road that you used to. Do you remember this big, huge road? And I'd pointed at the building. She used to like the big road. We'd go down it. And she said twice in one day, a call, she said, "Yes, I saw your funny big glasses on your handsome face." I said, "You saw them, Mum," because she can't see very well. "You don't worry your big handsome head," she said to me. I would have had no recollection that she'd say something like that. Then on October, she said, "Tired as usual." I think she could be talking about me. "You always do too much." Beryl Bradbury called, and she loved her friend. They've known each other since Mum was 25 years old, in 1955. Stay well. I know I don't like to praise myself, but she said it twice. She said, "Is there no end to your goodness?" It's always been my pleasure, Mum. It's reflected back to me. So I think we can return to these words because chronologically we're up to date now with some of the things that she said. We just I won't cross into 2022 because I'm about to arrive at the end of 2021, aren't I? Exactly. So I'm about to arrive. This will be our last Christmas together. Now here, there's much emergence of new Mum. And I had, I think, 4 weeks and I extended it a week. Or I had 3.5 weeks and I extended it a week and a half, definitely. So I had 5 solid weeks with Mum where I did tremendous amounts of work to try to tweak her supplement program, install someone that would help with the food, order food from Ocado, Waitrose and Sainsbury's to vary the diet, work with Jean about what she would do, and also there's another lady, I'm sure she wouldn't mind me mentioning her name, give Jean some help by enlisting another lady called Chelsea, whom I will mention. So there was a lot going on to shift things again and also to book Mum into a care home for a brief respite, as it's called, to have a change. She'd sometimes look at the flat and say, "Get me out of here," she'd say. So I would try to act on her wishes to do that, and she seemed as though she'd benefit. I hired a car, and so now in this 5 weeks, my gosh, it was an action-packed week. I did some genetic testing of my saliva and to see also my NAD levels, and it turned out that Mum, although she was 92, her genetic age was 62. And, sorry, I take that back, 72, 20 years younger from this DNA testing. And you might believe that when you look at her, because here we are now. I've arrived back for the Christmas 2021, as I've just said, my last Christmas with my mum. And she's had a nice haircut. And you can see that I looked at her and I thought, my gosh, new Mum? I hope you'll agree why I say new Mum. See her face. You can tell she's a little tired, but even with that, someone told me she looked like she was in her 60s here. And the genetic testing said she was 72, 20 years younger. It gave a very detailed profile mentally, and the brain area it put at 92. It knew that that was breaking down. But the rest of her physiology and makeup, and I think I know why, that the one thing that she was getting that she lacked all her life, rest. Too much of it though. Oh, to get the balance in life is not easy, is it? It's always, if not one thing, it's another that swings too much the other way. And she was getting rest. My gosh, she could sleep. She'd look at you and go, I want to sleep. I just want to sleep. I just want to sleep. Delicious sleep. And she'd get lots of it, thankfully, because otherwise the boredom of her condition. So that was taken on the 28th of December as we moved towards Christmas. And another one. So having had Christmas, I was still in the mood for Christmas pud and all that. I don't have any pictures of the... I should have printed some of Christmas, but there is one, but it's small. Right at the bottom there's my brother and Mum and I with her table piled with presents. Just about see. That was Christmas Day. Should have printed a big one. But I'd like to share it. Down the bottom, just above my fingers. All the wrapping paper, loads of presents were given. But some days have passed now, and here we are, Christmas, New Year's Eve. This was taken on the 31st of December. Once again, still new Mum, eh? Having a wine. Sparkling wine, Prosecco, yum. Looking very nice, yeah? Looking like a little boy. I don't know why I say that. And then, because of her condition, it would vary. If she had a urinary tract infection, that does bring on more hallucinogenic conditions. And she'd see her relatives. She'd see her relatives occasionally from Wales, Auntie Blodwyn, or the like. Or if she lay in bed, she might see things on the ceiling. And the thing with Mum was, because of her great rationality, I'd say things to her like, Mum, do you know that everything you just said isn't particularly what's really going on? It's your condition of where you just thought that? And she'd go, oh. Fantastic, and accept. And I Googled, do people with dementia know that they have dementia? And I do believe the answer says no, they don't know. But I was determined that I could logically, rational bargain with my mother to step back and be self-aware. For 3 years, Mum used Holosync, if you Google that, in bed. She'd lie in bed and she'd put it on in the nights, and it would put sound between your ears and train the brain down into a meditative state. Technology, meditation. I said, Mum, do you try it? She said, I like it, it's comfort. I put them on at 5 and I feel there's a bit of comfort in the bed. And she 3 years did that. So I think this helped her to step out of herself and be self-aware. Anyway, I found her fascinating. And that very same evening that the last photo was taken of her saying cheers, I'd go into the next room where she was in a hospital bed all the way on the floor. And she'd always coax me to come into the room because she didn't want to lie there. And I said, Mum, you've been ignoring me all the time you were in the living room and sort of being a bit grumpy. And as soon as you get into that bedroom, you're like, Peter, and I said, Mum, this is my free time to do my computing, do my supplements, do this, do the hiring of the people, check this, check the CVs of all these people. And now you're calling me and I'm not getting any sleep. I won't tell you what my biological age was, but it wasn't good, I can tell you, because I wasn't getting any rest, whereas Mum's was spectacular, spectacular. Anyway, this is what I would meet in the bed, and I have an even more a picture that sums it up even better. This is the being that I would meet when I would cross into that room and lie there. But there's another being coming soon, but it gives you a flavor of whom I'd meet. I was always trying to capture what I saw. I'd meet that, starting to get somewhat ageless, a little bit of a smile, and she'd just look at me. And those that knew her knew that by this time, she'd ask a question which could completely disarm anyone. She would ask you, "What do I do now?" And I'd go, "Oh, well, you just sort of wait, really, just be." She'd look at you. And her mind knew, I believe, that its structuring of time was tripping. So it was a rational question to her, because when you unfold time, it linearly leads to the next thing. And even a child knows that. And this is why I say to you that what I met was disarming and left the indelible burn, because we know how the innocence of a child can disarm and affect us. There's something about that innocence of a child which we see reflected back to ourselves. No ego, no fight, no battle, a little bit of heaven on earth finally, no resistance. But what about if you met a being that was more innocent than a child, and that inhabited an old body, but whose face was becoming younger and younger, and who'd affected to take a child's voice? She liked to talk like a child. And I'd say, "Where's me old mum?" She'd look at me, "Give me old mum." Because that voice was much deeper. And once she'd pull out old mum, and I'd think, "Don't give me that new mum. I want me old mum," I'd say to her, laughing at her. And then she wouldn't talk. She'd go quiet. And then she'd go back to the new mum with the child's voice, herself looking childlike. And then she'd ask you, "So what do I do now?" So what do you have when someone's personality is just pushed to the side and gone to them? What remains? Well, if they're not agitated, I put it to you that you see spirit, and it affects you. You see something that's normally hidden in this world. I've not Googled for any books on this, because I don't want to romanticize it. Because I know that this condition of dementia also brings great agitation to others, and is tragic at the end of the day. The great Mrs. Omotoso being lost to us, that's not something we want. But amidst that, you've got this new mum. Wallahi. And clearly you can see that's the thing that affects me more than anything. All the other photos I've shown you, I've been satisfied of a life well lived, and I haven't felt the need to repeat that for her or for myself. But I think I managed to say in my extended eulogy that it was this that always prompts me to say, I do want to meet you again. This thing. That's the bit that I want to meet again. That's the bit I sense that you can meet again. The spirit. That bit. I long to meet that again. And so the next morning, the very next morning from that last photograph that I've just shown you, fresh new year, 1st of December, 2022. We still meet new Mum. How bright and effervescent. Putting a brave face on it. Emoting in a giving way as usual. But the story would not be complete because those that loved her also knew, especially Kate, that she would also say, "Help me." She'd say, "Help me." And I'd say initially, "I am trying to help you, Mum. How can I help you?" And she'd just look at you and go, "Help me." Again, she'd say it. Or, "What do I do now? What do I do now?" She'd say, What do I do now?" And we had a formal diagnosis from the memory clinic in South London. And this very lovely man came. And eventually, if I skip to the end of the diagnosis story, she was diagnosed with mixed dementia, vascular and Alzheimer's, the two most common. Alzheimer's formed by plaque forming on the neurons where they can no longer communicate effectively with each other. And vascular dementia is the thinning of the arterial system, that the brain doesn't get enough blood. And that's the type where part of the brain that has not been getting enough blood might suddenly just go dark. It finally gives up the ghost, and you can get these drops in performance and behavior, whereas the Alzheimer's is just the slow deteriorative progression. And I'll jump ahead to say that when I left, Mum did deteriorate, just to jump ahead. So glorious to have this time with her. The 2nd of January, "I would like to go outside, Peter." "Great, Mum, let's go for a push." "I'm glad, I'll take you for a push." As we circled around our lovely surrounds, I set this photo up and said, "Mum, look, you and your Marlow Court. Is this not a glorious photograph that encompasses her and her home and her surrounds, even though she was fed up of that home?" Let me touch our flat. We're here, 2nd floor, ground floor from the front, mezzanine level from the back, perfectly placed apartment. There she is, with Marlow Court. Hope it's coming out. Managing to look joyous. Same day, numerous phone calls. The ever popular Mum. Well, she'd complained there were less phone calls. Many of her compatriots had passed on or were not well themselves. Her friends had dwindled for those reasons, but there she was on the phone. Of course I'd hired a car, a mobility car. Wish I'd taken a photograph to show it here. Or her whole wheelchair could go in the back of the car. So we made the most of it. I thought, "Mum, I really want to get you out of the house." So now you know the extensive trips that Peter and Mum have taken. And this time round, I'll touch a little bit more about our surrounds. Here we are. Here's Mum. Here's Crystal Palace where we are. This is the famous park, Crystal Palace Park. This is the lake with dinosaurs around it, which I'll show you later. And when we moved here in 1977, we went straight to this lake. But up here, Norwood Park, excusez-moi, Upper Sydenham. It's a pity that I haven't got this. I should have thought ahead. Anyway, just to the north is Dulwich Park, which also features very important to us because we popped to this park. Beautiful park done by the royal family for Queen Mary, something to do with Queen Mary. Anyway, just beautiful with the lake. So I said, Mum, let's go to Dulwich Park up here. This is a little bit inaccessible to get to this, although we did eventually get to it. And here we are. Sitting in front, you can tell how beautiful the lake is. 9th of January 2022. An exhausted Peter wearing his hat because he couldn't be bothered to comb his hair. And Mum all snuggled up on a bridge with ducks in the background. Took her out, said, here we are again, Mum. When she was much more fit, I'd taken her to Dulwich Park and still pushing her in the wheelchair, but she could walk. And we took a lovely photograph together. So here we are, determined to keep going. Took her to Dulwich Park. That was on the 9th. For some reason, 2 days later, we went again. We went again to this park. This time we went with the second physio and the lady that was helping with her food. A new lady that had just started working with Mum. So here's Mum wrapped up again and doubling up with this, but you can see the same shot effectively as the last one. You can see I'm keeping some dates on there. And then I said, Mum, this Mum, the Mum and Peter show has done so many journeys, as you all know by now. Let's do another trip, Mum. I'm sure we can do it. Let's do another trip to Box Hill. Even though we've been there before, let's go and take a trip in this car. Oh, I'm so glad I've got it here. And this is our last long trip for real. So we did one more day trip, set out early, cancelled the carers, wore an extra large pad so there was no need to change it, and drove all the way down here with Mum in the back of this vehicle from Crystal Palace all the way down to Box Hill, where one of our neighbours, Julian, comes from. A spot of natural beauty, really, really lovely. And then all the way back we came, and I was amazed that we even could manage to do this, but we did. We just about managed to do it, and we stopped at night, stopped on the way back and ate burgers in the car, in the back of the van, because I didn't want to take Mum into the restaurant because of COVID. It was full of people. So that is where we went, to Box Hill, this area of natural beauty, near Dorking. And it's called, yes, anyway, it's a special area. And we drove through it, and I'll just show you, here we are. It was the 16th of, I'd extended my trip, the 16th of January. So glad we had this special hire vehicle, and there you can see, there it is. There's Mum in the back. Wheelchair strapped, and I'd look back, are you all right, Mum? You're all right, Mum? It's bumpy, it's bumpy. It was bumpy for her. But we struggled on, my gosh. So she's 91, very unwell, but we just did it. And she also wanted to do it, to go somewhere, to get out. This was our last round trip. to Box Hill in the back of the car. And I have a charming picture because we got to the special viewpoint where you look all the way out and see the view over the hills down into the lowlands. And there's this lovely look of joy on Mum's face. I'm sure a lot of the time she does it for me. Focus on her face first. You can see as she looks out with her limited sight. To the famous view from the viewpoint at Box Hill out before we lost the light and headed for our burger at the Texas Ranch Burger, whatever it was called. Very nice, by the way. Isn't that a wonderful shot of Mum's last trip? Of all the numerous trips, 25 times visiting me overseas, other trips from around London. How many trips did Mum and I have done when you add them all up? At least 50. 50 trips, 25 international, many local trips, many trips within trips, 60, 70, maybe 70 trips. That's a lot of trips. There she is. So that was the 16th of January 2022, on our last quality 5 weeks together, the last trip to Box Hill. And I'm forever grateful. And the very next day, I went into her room and I said, Mum, it's like sleepover, because sometimes I'd say, okay, Mum, I know you now's the time you want to not be lying here alone, even though I've got things to do, and I'd lie next to her because her bed was always right down on the ground because we didn't want her to fall. It's like pajama party or something, and she'd be lying there. And I captured the photo, I think, which best captured new Mum and the spirit of my mum. The picture that I think has, as best I could, the essence of the being that would ask me with genuine concern, or in the most genuine way possible, would ask the question because they really wanted to know, what do I do now? It's like a koan from a Zen master, where the master will ask you a question that there is no answer, which is the whole point, because it's meant to make your mind stop, which is the whole point of Zen. And it would make my mind stop. And I'd look at her, and she'd look at me, and I'd think, who is this? New Mum. Here's new Mum. The new Mum that I miss so much. So much. The new Mum that I want to meet again. Just look again. And if you pay very close attention, She lost all her age in those moments. And even the DNA testing showed she was 20 years younger than her years. She was regressing and regressing and regressing, and her voice was regressing. And with her question, "What do I do now?" she became more innocent than a child, because she meant it. She wanted to know what she should do now. So I was utterly disarmed. And it took me a while to realize that there was a new mum that's left the indelible burn, for which I shall mourn for a long time. But what balanced it on the other side was the help me. I said it wasn't really romantic, because her mind also must have known that this is not, there's something that's not right. Something is not right. If time is tripping and isn't sequencing correctly, I'm sort of somewhere, the original me is lost within a disarray of discontinuous neuronic activity. That's what a brain does. An original her is lost within that somewhere, trapped somewhere. It's just better to be represented as a normal human, isn't it? So that part would say, "Help me." And as Kate said in her eulogy, she broke down. If you watch Kate, her friend, saying, she broke down. The preacher had to come and put his arm like that, the reverend. She said, "And that Mum, Betty, saying, 'Help me,' that was not the dimension. She meant it." And her friend, who loved her so much, named it, and I was looking on in the audience thinking, yes, yes. And I was so grateful to Kate for breaking down in sorrow for my mum's suffering. It pained her so much, Kate. I was unable to show my grief in such a short space of time. If ever this happens to me again, I've learned to show one's grief when your loved ones are before you. Try to show your grief. They're there for a reason. And Jean said to me later, "Peter, when are you going to show your grief?" Jean said to me. And this is a good time to touch upon Jean, because when Jean learned Mum died, Jean was the lady that sat with my mum continuously, the only person that sat there and got that glow, that burn. And any of you who studied Eastern mysticism say that if you sit with the Guru for an extended period of time and they emit whatever state they've reached, you get like a mild sunburn. You don't need to do anything, you just need to be by their presence. Of course, this can be exploited a lot, I know, the Guru thing. But there's probably something to it, that you're entrained by their state. And if there's anything in that, Jean, having been exposed to it continuously, was besides herself. She was besides herself. Bless Jean. If you saw her at the funeral, no. She was full of grief. And so she asked me later, "Please," she WhatsApped me, "show your grief." She sent me a message. I think she even capitalized it. So I am showing my grief here. And I thought, well, as a man, it is different. And where would it end? I think I said in my extended eulogy that I wanted to wrap my arms around Mum's coffin in the church and never let it go into the grave. And I remember Prince Charles when he lost his mum, the Queen, the Prime Minister lady who ran into so much trouble after the Queen's death came to see him, and you could just hear him saying as she came to meet him for the first time, to do the first audience with the King, "Been dreading this," he said. I've been dreading this for so long," he said, "but it had to come." He said something like that. I went, thank you, Charles. You too. Same. And he said something lovely, didn't he? He said of his mum, "May flights of angels fly thee to thy rest." Good on you, Charles. That's the way to do it. And then he signed the bouquet of flowers in top, "In loving and devoted memory." And those are words I've used in the Nigerian book after my forward, "In loving and devoted memory." And one other thing I'll talk about the royal family again, the Queen is reputed to have said, and I do believe she did, the Queen said, "Grief is the price we pay for love." And she said that before she lost her beloved husband, Philip. So much coming from my observance of them, grief is the price we pay for love. All spot on in my view. And so I had a new mum that I've loved with a passion and marveled at. So the next day after that photo was taken, and I do have it with me, these days I carry in my briefcase with me when I go to work, I carry my father and I carry new mum. And on each side of both of them is where they now reside. We will be changing the stone imminently to upgrade it. But the very next day after the photo of new mum, who looked so much like the day she wed, we still have a effervescent on the 18th. And in fact, this was taken on my brother's birthday, new mum. And on the 18th, the next day, there she is in her bed room, in her chair, still looking so sweet. And by doing this exercise, I realized that yes, we'd done the Biggin Hill trip, but I realized to my great surprise that my very last trip out with my mother was to Crystal Palace Park. I still had the hire car. I still had the help of the second physio, the physio assistant, and the lady that was helping with the food. And I said, "Where can we go with this car to get out? Let's go out, let's get Mum out again. Let's go to Crystal Palace where it all began." Because as I said, when we bought this apartment, we were very young then, and we headed down to the Crystal Palace because that's what you did. And I was 17, Simon was 13 or something, and we were all new to this England thing, looking for the pointer. But there we are, and that's Crystal Palace. And we're heading down to this lake for the dinosaurs. So we did. And once we got there, we went into a cafe and got this rather charming shot. Having had tea and cakes and a meal It was chilly. There's Mum. And so appropriate to the Omotoso family. Crystal Palace and the dinosaurs. Here we have Mum. Look at her face. We push the trolley, the wheelchair further along, and there we are. You can see the Stegosaurus in the back, or whatever it's called. Get to look at Mum's face. New Mum. Crystal Palace Park shall forever remain historic. I always struggle with the maths, but it's 45 years after she'd bought the apartment, she returned for one last look at the park. Our very last trip to go out for a jaunt. Days after that, I returned to Brunei, to Qatar. You think I'd know by now, Qatar. But we had arranged to have a change, because one of the trips that I took with Mum was to a care home. Mum said she wanted to change, and so we said, okay, let's do this. Let's see if this will suit Mum. And we booked 2 days, 2 weeks in this very, very posh, brand new, spick and span care home, which was near Bromley, and I'll be able to show you where it is because I have a map. So once again, we're at Crystal Palace in the orange. You can see Crystal Palace Park. Now we'll be able to see Dulwich Park. Probably not. Oh yes, it's further than I thought. Dulwich Park. Dulwich Park's up here. There's Dulwich Park, where we went. That's very important to our family too. Many trips to Dulwich Park over the 45 years we've lived here. But this time round, next to Crystal Palace Park, we head to Bromley, past where Mum has, where we have friends, very close friends. Of course, it's hard to hold, but there it is, Signatures Care Home. 25 minutes in a taxi. And we were impressed by the visit. We sat in the foyer and I said, Mum, does it remind you of our posh trips around the world when we've sat in foyers all over the place? And she said it did. And so we booked 2 weeks. Here it is, Signatures Care Home. You can see her, very impressive. And because Mum needed additional care, it was 2 levels, but I'll just show you the second level. In blue, in light blue where I'm touching, that was the dementia ward with specialist care. So we booked that, and we thought it would be a nice change, and she might even meet people that she could engage with and have some more stimulation. It was 5-star to say the least, brand new, truly beautiful. You can see some of the facilities there. It really was something where I made a joke and I said, do you think that I could come and stay? And they said, oh, you need to wait a few years. I said, damn. One shouldn't joke about things like that, I guess. You can kind of see that it was a work of art. But it's not the surrounds, is it? It's the hearts of the people that do the work there. Are they kind or are they cruel? Do they give you their attention? And it was very expensive. But we were determined to try for Mum. So I went away and then came back. And as a brief aside, I mentioned the Marjorie Warren ward when Mum was so ill with her ribs. Just to mention Marjorie Warren ward. They had a sensory special. It was all designed for people to be stimulated in their senses. And I wrote them a very nice letter thanking them for looking after Mum. Remember when she broke her ribs? And I wrote to the registrar. He replied saying, thank you for your letter. I'm going to visit them. That's delirium. I'm going to visit them and give them a congratulations for doing a good job. The very top person at King's College Hospital replied to me and said, oh, thank you. I'm going to go and tell these people they did a good job. Because why I was so grateful was that they sensibly bent the damn COVID rules to let me have access to Mum, because they knew this was a son on a mission from a long way away. They could have just told me to go home. So they, I sing their praises. Thanks to them for, in some ways, saving Mum's life. Much gratitude. And the National Health, within the limitations, they tried their best, and the carers the government provided also. What would we have done without them? Yeah. So anyway, suddenly I find myself back. It's the 29th of April. I walk through the flat. I'm alone with Mum. I see her, and my heart sinks. I weep. I can't believe the deterioration. Maybe some part of the vascular dementia. She's not the same person that I left. And then Jean said, Peter, I couldn't really tell on the phone. You think I would have been able to, I thought she was having an off day here or there, and how much can you really say? She could probably say certain things which were rote, which didn't require going outside parameters, but she was not, oh God, I couldn't believe what I met. And when I went there, it's a long story, I had it to myself. I was the only one in the flat. Just looked at me. And Jean said, I didn't want to say your mum has gone down, and this is a quote, 90%. Can you imagine? She told me she'd gone down 90%. Now, it was probably a turn of phrase, but she meant a lot, huh? So I arrived on the Friday, and Mum was meant to go into the home the very next day. And Simon had arrived, so 3 sons were with her, which was a joy to her, I know. And we thought, can she go? Is this suitable now? I mean, she's not going to really converse and meet people like this. She won't be able to communicate or talk and have conversations. Anyway, the momentum was all on, and we thought, okay, let's just go. And we have this charming photo of her and her 3 boys as we headed off that morning. And if you look, you can see that she looks not composed. You look at her face, not okay. We stood at the base of her bed the night before and said, your boys, Mum, your 3 boys. And she smiled from her bed as best she could manage the situation. She'd gone not to particularly appreciate that big bay window or the view. She had said, get me out of here. It had been, as I mentioned, 2 years in there, even before she fell. At the end of the travel videos, the last 2 years were cooped up there, mainly. So now she's been 4 years in there without venturing out very much, apart from Peter's trips. So we get there. We get to the famous signatures. Well, not famous. The signatures. Well, let's just look again. Having spoken about Marlow Court, before we I think it's important because Marlow Court is so central. Before we go to signatures, there once again, there we are, the orange. Gypsy Hill, we used to walk to get the train into London. Crystal Palace Park, we didn't go there a lot. The main shopping street, hard to find when it's that way around. Yes, here it is. You find it. Sainsbury's. Yeah, this is it. That's the way we'd walk. We'd walk up this street and do the shopping and walk back. My gosh, we've been there a long time. We've been there so long that in 1977 I walked up to this. We just arrived and rang to get my A-level results in a red phone box to get my 3 A's. Showing off here. To get my A-level results. I was 17 and I started university at 17. I wasn't even 18. So I show it because this area is our turf. This is Crystal Palace. And I'll show it again because even though it's not easy to see, same map, satellite view, there we are, Crystal Palace, there's the shops. That's the palace that burnt down, Gypsy Hill somewhere over there. For what it's worth, that's where we live. Nestled in that, you can see the white white things, those are blocks of flats, and we're in the one circled with the black. So if you home in on that, those white things are these white things. So make sure I get it the right way around. Yes. Lima Avenue, why do I struggle with this thing? College Road. Ah, yes, got it. There we are. The road comes down from the Crystal Palace, big hill, and sweeps around. Noise, a little bit of noise here, a little bit of noise here, a little bit of noise here, no noise here. Because we are in the middle one. Oh no, I got that wrong. It sweeps down from the, yes, I think I got it right, from Crystal Palace Parade, up the top. It's a big hill and it sweeps down, big road, lots of cars. But you come up in Lima Avenue, this is our address, and then into this secluded area. And then we look out at that nice, you've seen the lawn when I took the photograph, fantastically positioned apartment. Really did a stunning job of locating that. Just fell in her lap. No noise, no view, view of cars or audible cars, just greenery and a big beautiful window and a sunset. Very nice. So that's where Mum was all this time. In that block of flats. But now we have travelled to Bromley, the area to the signatures, as you know. We've just arrived. I go outside. A friend of mine had given us this scarf to Mum. Look, isn't it beautiful? It was brand new. We just opened up the scarf and gave it to her the night before because I'd arrived the night before. So she decided to wear its different colours. Very lovely orange. She's doing her best. I can tell that she's struggling. And so we've checked her in to the place. My brothers had gone back that evening and I said I'd settle her in. And now ensues Mum and I's last meal together. Now if you've done 60 trips, maybe let's say we've done 70 trips, but you add all the little ones together, whatever. How many meals a trip? 3, maybe 4 meals a trip. 70, 140, 280. We've probably had about 300 meals together. Something like that. And this is our last meal together. See, Mummy, she'd always do that. We had someone helping us feed her from the home, a very nice young lady. And she ate as much as she could. But this sums it up better. Classic photo, food in front of us. And Mum still managing to look sweet and chic, even then. Let's focus on Mum. In her brand new scarf, given lovingly by my friend to her. Before she checked in for the night. Kind of wondering why she was there in a way. And I think that was a Saturday. I think we would have asked her to not stay. We would have said there's no point her being there because her care at home is now running very, very well, very smoothly with everything she needs, with Jean and the food and the other helpers and the carers and my brother living there. We thought it would be a change and a benefit, but we didn't realize that mentally and physically she had declined. But fate conspired to not allow that to happen, because when my younger brother went there the next day, Simon, they said, "Your mother has COVID." Whoa. And they checked him at the gate and he had COVID. Richard then had COVID. I didn't have it, but by the next day I had COVID. So that was the Sunday. So we had COVID all week. And it took us till the next Saturday to get better. Simon got better first, so he was allowed to go and see my mum on Sunday, the 8th of May. She still had it, but the reading was weak. I still had it, Richard still had it, but luckily Simon didn't, and it was the 8th of May. So after a bit of a wrangle, they let him in, because on the 10th of May or so, he was due to go back to Australia. This was his last chance to see his mum. So we pushed and made that happen, and he represented us all, took the presents, took the whatever, sat by her side on her birthday. This semi-farcical situation of being in this luxury place, but trapped in her room with COVID, when her home would have been far more suitable, and with her sons with COVID, all trapped there as well. But I thought of her 20 years younger than her age result, and her DNA result, and I was heartened because she normally got rid of flus quite well. So she recovered. Took her a week and a bit. The test went negative around about the same time as mine, just as Simon was leaving. In the interim, just as I was getting better from COVID, you can probably see it in the photo, we were determined to go and honor my father's grave. And so the three boys, we headed there on the 6th of May, 2 days before my mother's birthday. And here we are at the time of what was the grave of my dear father. If you study me, you see I'm looking very peaked, because I think my test was still positive. I think I still had COVID, the tail end of it. I wore a mask and had the windows open on the way there. I may revisit that photo again. So then Simon returned on the 10th of May, and Mum was due to leave on the 14th of May, the Saturday. That would have been 2 weeks up. But the organisers said, you booked this beautiful room, it's Thursday, your mum's better, you guys are just better, you can do the party. You can do the party that you've organised for your mum, her birthday party, do it on the Thursday. I organised the menu, the wine and everything, and her closest friends came. And we sat downstairs and I said, look, my mother is weak and has deteriorated and she's just recovered from COVID. So don't be too surprised when you see her. She won't be able to sit there permanently with us. But she will be able to join us for a short period. So we sat there and we waited for Mum to come down. I was going to get her. Look at the setting. We have my brother Richard, Auntie Josie, whom she's known since, if you watch the Nigerian series, they met in '65. Her helper and granddaughter, I believe. Auntie Reva, who's married to a Nigerian and has 3 lovely daughters who are our friends and a great friend. Myself, Agatha, who used to be her masseuse and became like her daughter, the most caring person you could imagine, Polish lady. Maggie, who truly loved my mother, and my mum loved Maggie, and worked with her for years, 4 years or so, helping her before she became quite ill. I mispressed. This is Kate. Kate's known Mum since, when did they meet now? Anyway, Kate's been a fantastic friend. She's the person that I said, your mother's helped me was not the dementia, but she meant it. And Kate is wonderful, and I'm still in touch with her, and we communicate on WhatsApp, and she's fantastic as a person, and even though she's in her late 80s now, you'd never know it, and she still drives and travels overseas to visit her relatives. And this is Reva, the Auntie Reva, married to a Nigerian with a lovely 3 daughters. So what a wonderful setting of her friends all there, ready and waiting. And I go upstairs to get Mum. And look at her. Look how excited she looks. You'd never think she just recovered from COVID. Ooh, but I think I have a picture before that, sitting in her room, even before that. And you can see new Mum here. I hope you can see new Mum. Perhaps the elderly do often get this way, or you see a sort of childlike spirit come upon the elderly people as it shines through them. And it's beautiful. Look at Mum. Thin, but lovely. Truly lovely. We made a big picture of this and put it in a frame for the funeral. You can see a light in her eyes and an innocence. Just pure being, pure goodness, wishing goodness, loveliness. Wouldn't be able to do enough for you. Kindness. We really must hurry up and get heaven down to earth, everybody, quicker than we're doing. My lovely Mum, new Mum, with old Mum, also there. That was in her room. I took that in the corridor. And then perhaps, could this be my most treasured photo? Still in the corridor. Mum and Peter. The Mum and Peter show. _12th of May. Now, my mother passed away on the 18th of May, and what hurt me so terribly was when I showed this picture, and people said, she looks so well, she looks so fine, how could she die? This is what really hurt me again. I thought, yes, look at her. She had 6 days left in this world. And I do think so much of parallels to the Queen of England, and during that 10-day mourning period when the Queen died, I was so connected to it. I could feel Mum, I could feel the Queen, they merged into one, I mixed them up. And they also remarked, well, she met the Lady Prime Minister, and she stood there stooped, her hand had a stain on it. She smiled, much the same look that I've just showed you here. That look of age, and beauty and innocence, it was on the Queen's face that day. And 2 or 3 days later, she died. Similar. And I came across a YouTube program of a very caring woman who was a pediatrician? Geriatrician. And she said, we really do have to get a little bit more wise, she said. She said the majority of her patients, the greater majority, die in a hospital, in a ward, sometimes in the corridor, waiting in emergency ER, because there's always a process to get them into the bed or the ward. It doesn't just happen. And some of them don't even make it to get to the place where they're meant to be, the bed, or they get to the bed and shortly thereafter they don't know where they are, the relatives can't go, it's the middle, and they just die alone amongst strangers. And she said, do you know how the Queen's funeral was planned for years, how meticulously? She said, what I reckon is that part of the planning was the Queen being who she was, and similar to my mom, sensible and grounded, said, when you know it's time, no ward, thank you very much, and this is the Queen, it would have been private anyway. I want to die in my beloved Balmoral or home or in this room. I don't want to go to some place. And they would have made the decision, don't move her. Charles apparently was there, I think Camilla was there, I think the others missed it. And she died on purpose where she wanted to die. And she said, we need to plan that in. You need to plan it in. And I took great solace from this. Because 6 days later, when my mum showed signs of distress, Richard and I didn't know what to do. And we thought she'd pull through or she'd settle down. We did not call the ambulance. And she died. I thought, well, did we inadvertently do what the Queen chose willingly to do? Did we do that? So anyway, I'll touch on it a little bit more later. So, from this picture, my beloved picture, Mum came down, and I have a video of it. You get to see the state of Mum. She was bent in the wheelchair. Now remember, she just recovered from COVID in 8 days, which was a miracle in itself. And so I videoed her coming in, so don't be too surprised when you see that she's sort of somewhat leaning forward in the chair. This is the last video of Mum. Filming, here we go. It'll catch up in a minute. Filming, here we go. Here you go, Mum. Here's the wonderful Mum. I trust it will catch up in a second. Haley, come down the edge. Here's your guest. I knew you'd be fascinated. Yeah, see that smile. Here's Mum. Hello, Mum. Two days after, doesn't she look lovely? 2 days after beating COVID. Not bad, eh? In 6 days, she got rid of the virus. Yeah. Which is quite a record, isn't it? It's quite a record. Well done, Haley. So, thank you. Yeah, waiting. That's really lovely of you. And this is Agatha, Mum, mother of Mikoye, your favorite masseuse.
Hello, you look beautiful.
Doesn't she look lovely?
Very beautiful.
Yeah, in hot pink.
Amazing.
That's right. And little Agatha used the bells and the sounds. You remember, don't you, Mum? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, she did.
Beautiful to see.
I'll see if I can straighten Mum up a little bit. So Kate, if you want to come up nearer.
How are you?
Hello there, Jane.
Hello.
Jane, you look like Haley's sister.
Oh, sisters, are we?
I think you are. Yeah, I keep mixing you up. She's not going to
Are you a
spend
bit
long.
chilly today? Yeah, all have got a lovely blanket.
Yeah.
This is nice and pink, isn't it?
So Reva, if you want to come up,
Goes with my eyes.
come up a bit close. Yes, I think so. That's the only way you can get to really see Mum. Otherwise you... Yeah, anyway, just have a quiet word with her. Yeah. Do have a go, because she will expire with her energy very quickly. We know our Mum. Yeah, you better take your chance while you have her there. And maybe I'll bring her around to you. You know what I mean? Because to help your legs. And,
Everybody's Scottish accent, you couldn't miss me.
Go on, Chin. Of course, she said. Yes. How long?
I spoke to her a few times on the phone. Remember?
So you can see my mum, taking into account that she's had COVID, beaten it in 6 days, but you can see that she was not out there, but in a lot. And at Christmas she had not been like that. We toured the place and made her, admittedly I'd pressured her a little bit to go, convinced her to have a change, but she'd agreed to go. She said, if you come and settle me in, Peter, I'll go. But you can see the weakness of her. So there now she sat at her table. I hope some moving pictures give you a flavour of the last union of Mum with her friends, celebrating her 92nd birthday. And I've not printed out the actual the numbers. I would like to show them if possible. Yes, it's only here in the little one. Yes, this picture next to my finger. It has a 92 on the cake. You can see her gifts and the 92. Her 92nd birthday. 4 days, it was the 12th and her birthday was the 8th, so 4 days late. And there she is now, sitting with her loved ones in front of her and the cards all on the table. And one of the pictures is from a friend of mine. And it's Super Mum. It's a caricature of Mum dressed up as Super Mum. And look at Agatha looking at her so lovingly. Later on I asked Mum, did you enjoy your party, Mum? And she said one of those, it's the way people say things, isn't it, when you know that they are genuine. She said, yes. And she meant it. Because some would say, would not want to be seen if they had been diminished, keep themselves away. And better to remember people when they're at their best But no, she still wanted to meet her friends. And I bought 3 bears for her birthday, one representing each of her boys. And down in that same lovely room, they'd gone on my mum's lap. And here she is with symbolically her 3 boys. Managing still to look lovely, isn't she? The great Mrs. Omotoso. A life well lived. 92 years on, with her 3 boys. You did so well, Mum, to have your children. Your nuclear family. Put not a foot wrong. As I've always said, and in the interim, I'd gone home. I was at home with COVID, and I'd put it to Richard around about that time. It might have been just after Mum came back from signatures, because remember she has 2 more days in the home before we come back to Malo Court. That my contract was finishing at the end of June, in a month's, 6 weeks' time or so. And I said, I'm going to resign, and I'm going to come back, and Rich, we'll just have to sort of juggle it. I'll stay in Qatar maybe 30% of the time, because I have residency here, and 70% of the time, 2/3 of the time I'll fly, and I need to be near Mum, because I'd seen new Mum at Christmas, and I couldn't get new Mum out of my mind, or soul, or spirit, and I'd seen her extreme weakness, and I thought, who cares about another year's salary compared to seeing the last dying embers of your mother's life? I want to be near her. I want to be close to her. Work is irrelevant to me. And so I said I was thinking about it, but towards just before, around about when Mum was coming back from the home, I said to my brother that I would return, and I wouldn't work anymore, and I would be with Mum now. That the call to be with her was, that I was getting from in myself was deafening. It was a no-brainer. But as you learn soon, it wasn't to be. So 2 days after Mum came home on the Saturday, she'd been there 2 weeks, now it was the 14th, she was back. She sat and she was extremely out of sorts. It had started from the last day, the day after the party. Still, I managed to get her on her chair, looking out at the window with her on her desk, her portable desk that goes up and down, and I'd have to say, what you're about to see, taken on the 14th, when she just got back, was the last picture of Mum. That is a picture, I took pictures of her when she was ill, because from this day forth, she became progressively more ill with pneumonia and phlegm and breathing, chest infection basically. And my dear friend, whose mother's a similar age but younger, said after COVID, his mum straight away got the chest infection. So here she is, her last picture. I hope you will appreciate it. You can see she looks so pale and ashen, but look what she's doing. Of course, I set up the picture. She's looking at her 3 boys. Simon had returned. She's managing a smile. Her 3 bears, her 3 boys. Her husband, Femi, and her 3 boys were her life. She was the perfect mother. She did everything so well, not a foot wrong. She even made her money last till the end. She needed minimal help. She planned everything. And this is one of the things that drained on her. She was being a drain on others. Her friend Auntie Josie, who you saw at that party, said, "Your mother doesn't want to be a burden on anyone. This doesn't suit your mum. She was too active. Look at all the places she went." So that was the 14th of May. She needed antibiotics, and the doctor came on the 15th of May and said, she was wonderful, she was a lovely lady. She said, "Could be hospital, but let's see how we go with hospital. I'll come back on the Thursday." Now this was Monday, and I thought, oh, that's a long time, Thursday? I had foreboding even then. Mum couldn't swallow these antibiotics. We had to crush them and had to put it in a liquid, and we had to use straws, and we had to use every method possible to get them down. But without the antibiotics, that would have been even worse. She had so much phlegm. But we did think she'd round the corner. The physiotherapist lady on the Wednesday said, "Shall I come and see her?" I said, "I don't think there's much point. She's ill." She said she should be rounding the corner. But it was the other way. So that night, just before antibiotic time, I was struggling to feed her. The carers looked at her because she lost a lot of weight in the Signatures care home. And one lady used a Nigerian expression, "Her body is finished." Literally, finished. Well, finished did mean finished in the end. And she was visibly upset, like what have they done to her in that care home? We would have pulled her out, and they did get her through COVID. It was just unfortunate that it happened as soon as she got in there. It didn't come from, the COVID did not come from the home. It came from, Mum already had it. We know how it came. From when Mum went in, she already had it. No one else had COVID there. So she protested as if she was struggling. What a dilemma. Richard came in, I called him in, and we thought, well, what will they do? And it seemed she was settling down in herself. And I do wish we'd thought to call the ambulance, but we had this, they'll take him away, they'll take her away, and then you won't know, and then you'll be learned, and then you hear that she passed away, and some, just like what that lady said, that the greatest majority of all their patients, the greatest majority of them, they always die in some faceless ward. That shouldn't you know it's time? It was, when things like that happen to me, I go, "Mum, you sent me this video to give me solace about what potentially could have been a very not good decision." So as she seemed to be settling down, I went to the next room because it was still about 50 minutes till her midnight antibiotic. And I've heard that often several people said that the dying have excuses to get you out the room. We just popped out, and when we came back, she'd slipped away. Several people told me that. And when I went back, I couldn't believe it. She wasn't breathing. I rushed Richard in. I hadn't known she was dying. I genuinely didn't know. How many other hundreds of times that I'd seen her like that, but she pulled through, but not this time. Not this time. The benefit of hindsight, they would have come and given her oxygen, but then would they have agreed to leave her? They have certain procedures where if they leave you, then they'll be in trouble, so they just like to always take you to the hospital. I don't know what else to say. My brother said, we made a call and we made our call. That's what we thought to do. I don't know how it would have worked out otherwise. I don't know. Needless to say, the shock was the largest I've ever seen. In fact, when I think of the event, I can't even think of it spatially correct. She's moved somewhere else. I can't see the event. My mind changed it. I try to see it, but I can't see that event. We rang 999 and there was an ambulance passing by. I swear to you that within about 6 minutes they were in the house. They were passing by and they tried to revive her. They really, really tried. She could not be revived. And we looked down at the ground and Richard pointed out, look at the thinness of her legs because she'd lost so much weight. And those 4 days prior from coming back from the care home to this event I'm saying now, she would not eat. She did not want to eat. My younger brother said, well, when they give up food, like whatever the mammal may be, they're saying they don't want to be here at all, really at all. They don't even want to eat now. They don't want it. And we were giving her Fortisip liquids and please suck this food, and I was begging her to eat. Please, Mum, please, begging her. She didn't want. So it was not nice. I wish I'd seen her last breath, but it truly blindsided me. She seemed to be settling down after being aggravated, but that was her sign of showing she was going. So when I tell the story of my mum's life, you can see that the words that I'm saying to you now cannot be left out. And so to my great amazement, my mother had passed. I take solace in the Queen too, how she just went. They didn't call any ambulance. Neither did we, but unwittingly. It was 1 a.m. by the time they left, and the coroner didn't come till 7 in the morning, 7:30. So we had 6 hours with my mum in her room. She passed in her own bedroom. 6 hours to look at her body, to mourn her. My brother sat alone with her, looking at her. I sat alone looking at her. I talked with her. I called Simon. He said, open the window. 2 police ladies came and were very sympathetic. They have a procedure because they always fear the worst. If someone dies like in their home in that way, they have a procedure. They took our photograph with Mum, the police ladies. And I thought of the alternative of someone passing in a hospital where they just open you go and they say your loved one is passed, and you go there and perhaps they have them in cold storage or pull out the thing. I don't know if they let you have a few minutes with them just looking at them. And my mum, we had 6-7 hours with my mum. Initially she seemed to have the slightest of smiles. I'd call it a peaceful air to her. Even after they tried to revive her. Oh, my mum. And so I've been so lucky with death in my life. I've lost my father and my mother. Only 2 people that have been very close to me. What are the odds? For all these years, I've only lost 2 people. I'm blessed. I think of the war in Ukraine and all the grandmothers there that have been blown up, and children, and horrendous losses of life. And yet my mother lived 92 years of life, glorious life. I keep saying, how many more did you want, Peter? Well, endless is what I wanted, because I sense eternity, and I know that one day we'll crack this longevity thing. We really will. So that's a frustration, that I know that life can be longer. I know, but just not now. And so I come to the end here, but because it's all geographical, where is my mother's true final resting place? I would like to show you. By now you know Crystal Palace quite well. You know the familiar orange shading. You know the big Crystal Palace Park. You know Dulwich Park. Yes. You know Dulwich Park up here. It looks the shape of a kidney, doesn't it? Here. Well, the burial place of my beloved father and my beloved mother is Camberwell New Cemetery here. This is their final resting place, near the Honor Oak Station, by rail. If you're ever there, you get out at Honor Oak and walk round to Camberwell New Cemetery, and I'll show you the location of the final resting place of my father and my mother. This is where I shall be going to honor their grave as much as I can. This was the true final resting place of my parents. I am blessed. If I mention Ukraine and other places again, who was it that said to me, someone in the office, Peter, you have to remember that sometimes when they're loved ones, there is no grave. They're just gone. They don't even know where they are. It's true. So I will show you the map view, and you can get an idea of the greenery of the area. Same map as the previous one. Our house here. Oh, the lovely Dulwich Wood Park up here. And there it is, Honor Oak, Camberwell New Cemetery. Ah, this is what I want to show you. Yes. The cemetery is just to the north of the circle. And can you see the rail line running? So where my parents are buried, just on the edge of that green, it looks down into the valley of the rail. And my father was a railway, for years, railway engineer. It was fitting, he's right next to these tracks. They're together now. But I think I have a close-up. Oh yes, I think I have a much better close-up. It's comfortingly close. And we had their reception down here. After the wedding, we dropped down in cars and came and had the reception here. This beautiful send-off for my mum. And you can all see the photographs and the videos of that. So as I home in a bit more, of course I've got a better picture of that. So now I've homed right in to this cemetery. Camberwell New Cemetery. There it is. That's the railway line. This is the plot where my parents are. That's the railway line. It goes down that steep embankment to the line. Let's see if I can touch. The graves are there, but I'll home in the grave. They share the grave. After all the travels of my mother, all around the world in these far-flung places, I absolutely had to add with a spatial component of where did they end their travels? What was the spot where they stopped and where they still are? Where do they reside, their mortal remains? But before we go down to the final location, homing in on that last one, I'll show you the approach to the grave. It's the opposite of an approach. When you get out at Honor Oak Station, you walk up the road and you enter here and you walk this way into the cemetery. From here, this way, the opposite of what it shows. So you can get a good idea of the approaches themselves, have a good presence. And then when you finally enter the cemetery, and you stand there, looking towards the railway line. Remember I said it went down. Looking towards that railway line from the location, much the location of my mother's grave and father's grave, you see this. Just off that little edge there, it dives down to the railway line below. I wish I'd walked closer and taken it. And beyond that is a valley, a big valley. It looks like you're looking out to the Shire, to where the hobbits might live on the other side of the valley, because it goes down to the railway line. On the other side of that little horizon, it dips, and then there's a valley, and you look out across to another hill. I do have a shot of that somewhere. So even that direction is quite lovely. That's looking down towards the railway line. Now the look, if you turn around and you look the other way, exactly opposite the other way, and these, by the way, were taken on the 6th of May when my mother was in with COVID. I showed you the picture with my brothers recently. I took the opportunity to take these then. My mother was in the care home with COVID. Now there, look at that. You look the other way, and you've got this wonderful, wonderful view. There's an allotment where people have allotments, and you look up to this. There's a castle at the top there. I wonder if the next shop shows it. A little castle. Look at that marvelous vista. It truly is a beautiful cemetery where they live, where they reside. Both the wrong words. Where they are laid to rest is the words I'm looking for. Yeah, the castle is there. Same picture, but zooming in. Look at that, there's a spire. There's a tiny little spire, which if you get to a different angle, you can see more of that. It's out of Disneyland. It's truly lovely, in the winter or in the summer. So the setting is delightful. The setting is very delightful. And the final magnification, going yet further in. Well, I'll recap. See if you can remember this black shape, because there's a big cemetery, but this is the section where my parents are, looking down to the rail there. And here is that shape. You can just about see. Here it is, the final magnification of that black shape. There. There it is. And you know what orange means by now. That's the plot. That's where my parents' grave is. That's the approach. Exactly. When I showed you the approach, Honor Oak is over here. That's not true. Of course, Honor Oak is over here. You get out at Honor Oak. You walk up this road. You go up that beautiful approach. I showed you the picture. You get to a car park. Once you get to the car park, you walk this way. And then, yes, correct, you walk this way. You walk along there. There used to be benches. Mum and I would sit. We'd go and see Dad so many times. My gosh, she went to see her beloved husband so many times. And then you walk along there and you get to the plot. And who are the guardians of the plot? I'll show you in a second. You get out of the station, up there, down to the car park, round. If any of you are ever in London for Honor Oak Station in New Camberwell, try and go and see my parents. If you have this video, you can freeze frame it. I'm pretty accurate with where it is, somewhere very close there. And if you look, you'll find my parents and you can honor them. A friend already 2 weeks ago went and put roses and she sent me a picture. I was so touched that she'd already gone to tend the grave, for which I soon will go after Christmas. The final resting place of my mum and my father, who's been there for 18 years. The anniversary of his passing was the 25th of November, and Mum's is the 18th of May. He was only 74. She was 92. God bless you, Mum and Dad. May you rest in peace. And the guardians who you left behind of the grave, you've already seen, are your children. Richard, my brother, myself in the middle, and Simon, my brother. And you can see the wording is for my father, but we will change this soon to a bigger stone with both their names, much in the style of William Tompkin Evans and Evelyn Evans, my mother's parents, who were also buried together, for those of you that might have watched the Welsh video up in North Wales. And here their beloved daughter lies down in London. So we will look after you as guardians of your final resting place. How to end after such an unusual journey with you for a topic that's so sensitive and so personal, and yet something that I did want to communicate, the essence of the light of my mum that I saw. Because my whole mission has been to communicate the life of my mother and to show her it's only done once and then it's captured. She's honored, she's recorded, she's eulogized, she's praised, gratitude is shown. Long overdue to show gratitude to my father in this way. He's brought in as the producer of the whole event, an honorable man, a truly good person. And then to realize that I have them both within me and think, oh gosh, how lucky I am And then I go forward, strengthened and emboldened myself, having restructured my life, my origins, and where I come from, what I might be here for. And to see all the gems that are taken for granted because we don't have time to go back. We can barely keep up with the future, with the present. Information age, too much information. I forced myself to look back, and the richness that I've discovered is just such a blessing of all the things that I've experienced. Just so happens many of them with my mum by convenience. We were given to each other, just as my parents gave us so much. So I do feel some satisfaction now, having come to what truly does seem to be the end of my mum's story. And I'm glad that I have been able to get into detail. The longer this project's gone, the more detail I've become as I've learned how to deliver the message better and gone deeper and deeper and deeper. And capturing this last 2 years of my mother's life has been a very long one. 3 hours for 2 years. But it was a very important 2 years. And I feel that I have captured it as best as I would have wanted to capture it, because I knew that it would be a difficult ask in order to describe something that's so esoteric in a way. How could I describe this essence of her that I'd seen effectively? I'm looking for something. But I do feel that in the end, I hope you two also agree. Just 1 second, if I can find it here. It's okay. I hope that you also agree that it came across the essence of New Mum and what I was trying to achieve with telling you about her. And also I hope that some of you have been able, this is what I was looking for, that you might be able to look at the what started everything off was to talk about Mum's life in Nigeria and the trailblazing that she did there, and that was her great love. That would be good if I get have been able to put into the world her wish to publish in some way that part of her life. And my prop that I can't find, it's fine, I can't find, was the realization of my mother's life in 3 parts: 30 years in Wales and meeting my dad, which is extraordinary in Nottingham, 28 years in Nigeria, the middle part, she loved, 30 years at the end, traveling, basically, seeing the world, having adventure, and 2 years at the end. You just heard that in depth of the end of her life. So I think it's fitting that instead of looking anymore, I just focus. Thank you all for being part of this journey, of this unusual offering and work from myself, which grew legs of its own and has been such a rich project and given me so much. I can only hope that it's given others something and you found it interesting. Who knows in the future what else I might be able to do to honor my parents, but I hope that at least this has been some ways towards that honoring, and that those of you that know where they are buried. You might even take it upon yourself one day to visit them there. And I feel closer to them, both, and I hope I forever do. I feel they're really, really remembered and really documented. And the life that they gave us, and all those adventures in Nigeria and the Wales and our heritage and where we came from, and all the trips and all these things that we did. I'm truly, truly, truly enriched by the experience, and structured and ordered and enhanced. And as I said in my first extended eulogy, that I do feel enhanced in some ways after Mum's passing, as she did promise that she'll be watching me and looking over me. And so, dear Mum and dear Dad, you're ever more present to me now. I really feel that through this work, that your life has an artifact here in these hours of talking, where you are anchored somewhat in this plane better, and not slipped ethereally away forever, remembered. And especially when we put the headstone on, it will be a landmark for people to come and see, and for us to see. And as my mother said simply on the tombstone of my father, always loved. She had a way to encapsulate it simply. You are always loved, and as those of you that have watched me for a while now know that I don't like ending, so I'm dragging it out a little, but it's always only left to thank you for being present to this labor of love, not even labor, quite frankly, offering of love. And I'm most, most grateful that I have been able to deliver it to you, and may it enter into this world as something that may lighten people's hearts in some ways. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to meeting some of you, I'm sure, in the future, being the jewels in my life that you are. And I'm very grateful that I was able to describe new Mum and her spirit, and as I put in the foreword to my book, because I do want to meet you again. And that's where I have the faith. There's something there that's an indelible burn, but which keeps my attention and does not allow me to forget, because of what I sensed and what I saw, and the light and the beauty. And I think this is the way to end, that I said before, that yes, my mother's light shone always, constantly. That was the characters that she had. It didn't flicker and dim and flicker and dim. I think it was one of her most outstanding qualities, and why she had many, many friends, because whatever glow she had stayed constant. She wasn't fickle. She didn't do that. She was constant. The better you saw today was the better you saw tomorrow. This is why I struggle with many words to define her greatness, that I know was there. That was one of the great things she had. She wouldn't huff and puff or on and off. She was always there for you. And I say this because what was New Mum? New Mum was at the end when that light went poof, exploded in a crescendo of otherworldly light that I saw and that burned me, and that I do want to see again. And I shall keep that spirit alive and that memory alive, and it shall guide me. And for that I'm grateful to know that my mum, through that, hasn't left me, and that all that has passed is meant to be part of the grand design. It's the light that keeps the law alive. And so you do meet again in nature's way. That's the best way I can describe it. And that's what my effort has been here, to describe what I saw in her and the love that was felt. Thank you to all for participating in what might be my morning, my therapy, or the greatest show I could possibly put on for my parents, out of tremendous gratitude for the wonderful life that they've given us and me. My love to you all. Until we meet again next time, who knows if I'll have any more offerings, but I'm entirely satisfied with this one. God bless you all. May you and your loved ones know much fulfillment, lots of love. Thank you.